Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar today, where we are lucky enough to be joined by some of our industry leaders as we explore one of the biggest ongoing challenges across our industry, which is really balancing the employee experience with the customer experience. Today, we are joined by a company who continues to invest not just in the industry, but certainly has always supported us at Auscontact as the industry body. Our long-term partners and gold sponsors are Verint. And we also are lucky enough today to have the wonderful Elif Osden from Woolies X, who is joining us to really talk through almost a case study of what's actually changed for them since they've actually been working with Verint and applied some of the things you're going to be lucky enough to see today. So fantastic session ahead of us. In the spirit of reconciliation, Auscontact acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people here today. Today's session will run for approximately 60 minutes. During that time, we're going to hear and see and get to feel a little bit of this fantastic tool from Verint. And it's going to really give you some insights into, I guess, Tim, something that has been incredibly important to you for a really long time, and we're now starting to see some real results in the market with it. So you're going to get to see that. We're then going to hear a little bit about what's gone down at Woolies X, what's changed, what's improved, and what opportunities that then opens up for everybody. As always, we'll have some time at the end for Q&A. But if you've got questions that are relevant to the session as we walk through it, we'll actually jump in and ask them as we go. We have the wonderful Tim Buzza joining us today. Tim is the Director of Workplace Flexibility at Verint. And as I said, Elif Osden, real-time team manager at Woolies X. And again, there's going to be plenty of opportunity for you to ask questions of both of them as we go through. So I'm Fran Southward, CEO of Auscontact, and I'll be your moderator today. We'll just run through some general housekeeping with you. Remember to interact. That maximises the benefits. And as you know, you don't need to take too many notes because we will actually send the recording out along with any slides from Tim that we can share. If you have a question throughout the session, use the Q&A button or the chat feature in the control panel. Ask those questions, get them ready. And as I said, if they're relevant to the slides that Tim's actually talking to, we'll jump in and ask them in real time. Otherwise, we'll keep them for the end. Type them as we go, because otherwise, if you're anything like me, you'll forget them. If you're listening through headphones or have any type of tech problems and you need some help, just use the raise hand feature on the control button and one of the team will jump in and try and help. Alternatively, you can actually use the dial-in numbers that you would have got in your original registration email. So that's it from me. I am going to hand over to Tim, who is going to start our session today. As I said, we're going to hear a little bit more about Verint Flex Time tool and really sort of see what those opportunities are in action. Tim, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Fran. Thanks for the introduction, and it's great to be here and looking forward to the conversation today. So just to reinforce what Fran was just saying, I'm going to go through a slide deck, but there's nothing more boring than watching a PowerPoint presentation. So please, jump in with questions on the chat, and we'll try and make it as conversational as possible. If the questions don't get addressed during the presentation, then we'll certainly try to address them at the end. So I'm just going to share my screen and get things kicked off. So what I really want to talk about is absenteeism and attrition in the contact centres. So I started in call centres scarily in 1998. I took my first call in a contact centre. It was at Foxtel, excuse me, in Melbourne. And I still remember today, 90 times a day, I used to have to say, "Welcome to Foxtel's World of Entertainment. This is Tim." And we were scored on that. I had to make sure I said that correctly on every call. And excuse me, I'm just got a bit croak. So back in 1998, working in that Foxtel call center, we had an absenteeism and attrition challenge. And that our absenteeism was sitting at around about 9%, and our attrition was around about 35%. And we were challenged by that. There were numbers that were challenging because they affected our bottom line. They were reflective of the employee experience and ultimately translated to impacting the customer experience. But what's kind of scary for me is that nearly 30 years later, the industry is still challenged with those same metrics. And if anything, we've actually gone backwards. There's not many call centers the size that Foxtel was back then that could actually say they're tracking at 9% absenteeism and 35% attrition. Most call centers of that size are performing a lot worse than that. And this is not just a problem in Australia, it's actually a problem globally. So I've just pulled up some random reports off the interwebs, and you can see that, over the last decade, whether it's in Asia, whether it's in the US, whether it's in Europe, all those markets are effectively had the same challenge, and all of those markets have experienced the same outcome, which is that the industry has gone backwards with absenteeism and attrition. The results have got worse, and that's despite the huge investments that we've made to try and bring those numbers down. I know personally, as a contact center manager and leader, I've implemented all sorts of initiatives to try and bring those numbers down. I've done things like leadership development programs, onboarding changes to the onboarding processes and training. I've implemented gamification, made changes to incentive programs, increased remuneration, you name it. We're throwing the kitchen sink at this problem, and it hasn't moved at all. Fran's got her hand up. Don't know. No.
Me too.
And so we've put a lot into addressing this because, like I said before, if absenteeism and attrition are high, it's impacting our bottom line and it's impacting the customer experience. And so as a result, we've given a lot of focus to it, but we haven't been successful. And the reason why we haven't been successful is because at the core, the operating model within contact centers hasn't actually changed. The technology might have changed. We might have introduced call recording, call monitoring. We're bringing in AI. We're doing all sorts of wonderful sort of technological advancements that are having an impact on the customer experience. But the core employee experience in contact centers hasn't shifted. And the operating model is still fundamentally the same, and it's always been the same. And that is that we require our employees to put work at the center of their life, make work non-negotiable time, and to fit their life around their work. We expect work to be a place where people connect to purpose and meaning. We expect it to be the place where we get our sense of self and personal reward, and we try and create that experience for our frontline employees. As an employee value proposition, that's one that I personally sign up to. For me, that is what my work is. I'm happy for work to be at the center of my life. I'm happy for work to be non-negotiable time. Work is where I connect to meaning and purpose. Work is where I've built important relationships in my life. It's where I met my husband. It's always been this core element of my life. But that's not realistically what we should expect to create, and also for all of our frontline employees to align to. For a lot of people, they want to put something else at the center of their life. That might be that they've got a young family and their children are at those important years where they want to be present for them as much as possible. It might be they've got elderly parents that they're caring for, and their well-being is critical and most important thing. It might be that they're studying at university and they've got another career objective, and the work is just an enabler of them to pursue their studies. It could be that you're a professional athlete and we've got the Olympics coming up. Maybe they've got aspirations to be a professional athlete, and that's what's important to them. And work is an enabler of that. It could be any number of things. It could be that I'm semi-retired and I still need to work because I still need an income, but my passion is volunteering on Meals on Wheels, and that's what I do. And that's where I get where I connect to meaning and purpose. So it could be any number of things that it could be what is critical and important for that person that they want to put at the center of their life, and it's probably not work. And so when we design an operating model and a value proposition for our employees that's based on this idea that work should be the center of your life and it should be the non-negotiable thing and everything else has to fit around that, then we're creating an outcome that actually is not going to fit for a large proportion of our society and therefore a large proportion of our workforce. So we need a new operating model in contact centers. We need an operating model that allows people to put whatever it is that matters to them at the center of their life, to fit their life around that. And then I think about work then as these work bubbles that then can move around within their life. So we need a flexible operating model, a flexible value proposition within contact centers. And we're actually at a really exciting point of transformation as an industry. I think about when I first started in contact centers, it was described to me when I first started in training as a white collar sweatshop. That's what call centers were known as. And that was the operating model back then. And as I said, the operating model hasn't really changed. So if we're really honest with ourselves, a lot of call centers could still be described today as white collar sweatshops, where people just have to come in, put their headset on and follow that bouncing ball until the end of the day, get measured and monitored within an inch of their life, whether or not they're following that bouncing ball accurately or not. And at the end of the day, take the headset off and then go home. That's their day. And that's how call centers have been, but they don't have to be that way anymore because we've got new technology and new ways of working that have emerged. COVID has accelerated that, and it's very exciting. So call centers have the opportunity to go from being one of the most inflexible workplaces that exists within the developed world to actually becoming one of the most flexible workplaces within the developed world, and a complete 180 from where we've been, where you can work from anywhere, work from home, and also have control over your roster and work when you want to as well. So we've got technology now emerging that's enabling these new value propositions. And the industry is starting to wake up to this and recognize that this is actually the way forward and the way in which we evolve our industry. So when we asked the industry in 2022, do you feel increasing roster flexibility reduces the likelihood of agents leaving the organization? 57% of leaders said no. We don't think increasing roster flexibility will reduce the likelihood of agents leaving. A year later, so just last year, we asked the industry again the same question, and the complete opposite result. This time, 67% of respondents or managers said yes, agent flexibility would decrease the likelihood of agents leaving the organization. So we're starting to see this, we're waking up to this, that actually it is possible. We can unlock a level of flexibility that previously has never been available in contact centers. But to do that, to give agents this level of flexibility, what we're actually talking about is transforming the way in which we go about scheduling call centers, moving away from a call center management and a call center workforce planning practices based on getting the right person on the phone at the right time, talking to the right customer. That's been our way in which we've always built schedules within contact centers. And we've done that for a reason. Getting the right person on the phone at the right time, talking to the right customer, gives great customer outcomes. The customer experience is critical. We have to make sure we deliver on that. That's the critical kind of purpose of the contact center. But at the other side of this, we've also got the employee experience. And so we need to balance this CX with the EX. So workforce planning as a practice within contexts is evolving from right person, right customer, right time to now moving to a place where the purpose of workforce planning is about balancing customer experience with the employee experience. How do you do that? That's the question. How do you balance CX and EX? And that's interesting because the CX side of the equation is 100% known. We can forecast very, very accurately with AI tools now coming onto the market that are even enhancing that forecastability to a point which is almost unbelievable. We can very accurately forecast how many customers are going to call, when they're going to call, and what they're going to call for. We know that within our scheduling practices, we can forecast that CX and understand that very, very precisely. On the EX side, that's unknowable, or at least it should be unknowable, because as a manager, as an organization, I shouldn't seek to know what's happening in the personal lives of our employees. I don't need to know that somebody's dealing with a difficult relationship or balancing, co-parenting challenges or whatever it is that's happening in their life that's causing them the difficulty of committing to work. I can't expect to know that, nor should I want to know that, because that's personal. So in order to balance CX and EX, the only person that could possibly know all of the information needed to achieve that balance is the employee themselves, because they know what's happening in their life. And we also know what's happening from the customer side. So if we make that customer information, democratize it, make it visible, make it understandable for the employee, then the employee is the person who can actually achieve that balance, because they've then got all the information needed to do that. So the prediction I'm making here is that future of workforce planning, the future of contact center operating models, is we're going to move increasingly towards a future where employees are empowered to be more self-directed and self-managed generally, and employees are going to be able to manage their own schedules within a set of guardrails so that they can achieve this balance between the customer experience, the requirements of the business that they're working for, and what's happening in their life. And so we're going to move away, and effectively the future that I expect to see is one where employees become their own personal workforce planner. And I think that's really exciting. That's a future which I can't wait to see. And I think we've got some exciting technology now that actually is helping us make the step towards that future.
Tim, it's interesting, you and I have talked before about the visible um, consistency with that operating model. So, like you said, 20 years have gone past and we've seen exponential change in every
Yeah.
other aspect, not just in how our customers want to operate with us, that whole expectation piece. But think
Yeah.
about the technology and what's changed, innovation, the rest of it. And yet we still have this essentially the same micromanaged environment that people go to for a time, but increasingly
Yeah.
we see them wanting to opt out from. So, I'm with
Yeah.
you, the opportunity and excitement that comes with treating our staff like adults for a start, empowering them to actually be part of the solution. Suddenly it opens up some new opportunities.
It really does. And I'm, 30 years that I've been in contact centers, I've always viewed it as something we need to lean into or we need to address, but I never really understood that how important it was until I set up the first work from home contact center. And I did that back in 2010 when I set up work from home for Suncorp. And when we were setting up work from home, we transitioned some employees to the work from home contact center from the main call center. And the feedback I got was, I actually miss working in the call center. I miss my teammates being around me. I miss that energy and that excitement, but I'd still prefer to work from home. And the reason why I still prefer to work from home is because it's giving me back time in my life. It's giving me access to more time with the people that I love doing the things that I love. It's creating more meaning within my life. And it's giving me more utility of my time. So I've got a break. I can go and put some washing on the line. I can catch up with my family. I can do other things rather than just grabbing a cup of tea and a biscuit and then getting back on the phone. So it was this dimension of flexibility around time that came through when we set up work from home that really showed up as the thing that needs to be addressed in order to transform that operating model into something that's more employee centric. The reason why we've never done it before as an industry is because if we overstaff by a couple of percent, then we've blown out the cost of the call center. If we understaff by a couple of percent, then the customers are having trouble getting through. So getting the right number of people on the phones at the right time is so important to a contact center, and it's the success of that contact center that we've never allowed ourselves really to experiment with other ways of scheduling and empowering agents around schedules. In fact, we've usually gone the other way. The bigger the call center, the bigger the stakes. And so usually in big call centers, if you're running a 1,000-seat call center and you go 2% overstaffed, you've now got 20 extra staff working that you didn't need. That in Australian market, fully loaded is probably costing you 100 grand a person. So you've added $2 million to your annualized cost by being 2% overstaffed. So the bigger the call center, the bigger the stakes. And therefore, often what happens in the bigger call centers, we manage things even more tightly. We create, we've got whole teams of real-time managers that are, watching everybody's movements and sending emails off to team leaders and saying, oh, Tim's off the phones again. He's not back from his break. And we've got all these practices that we've developed as an industry in order to make sure we've got the right number of people on the phones at the right time. In order to make sure we're not blowing out our costs or impacting the customer in a negative way. And so that's the aspect of contact centers that's I think has the most negative impact on the employee experience. And because we've never addressed that as an industry, we've just done band-aid stuff like R&R programs and incentive programs and gamification and fruit baskets on Fridays and all sorts of things to try and make the employee experience better. But it's never addressed this absenteeism and attrition problem because at a core, we've had this issue, which is basically how we manage people's time is just not a human experience. And people feel like battery hens because of that. And we've, as an industry, and I as a manager, just accepted that, well, that's just what call centers have to be. So we need to do a lot of other stuff on the other side of the equation to try and offset that. But actually, now we've got technology that says actually it doesn't have to be that way. There's other ways of doing this, and that's where we are, which is really cool.
There's a comment here from Martin, and I think it'll probably feed into kind of the next part of the conversation. But he's sort of saying, well, with empowering employees to find their own balance across that CX and EX, how does a business effectively reward performance? So again, I would actually
Yeah.
say that it's not exclusive, right? And giving
Mm.
freedom shouldn't be about I'm going to, reward high performance
No.
or treat underperformance in a
Yeah.
particular way. But yeah, I'd love to
It's
hear your
not a
thoughts on that, Tim.
Yeah, well, the interesting thing about flexibility, as I've learned from my own personal experience, is that flexibility isn't for free. It's a give and take. It
Correct.
is about balance. So some of you might know that I left Australia 3 years ago, and I've been traveling the world whilst working, growing a company, and now working for Verint. And I'm currently sitting. Hope nobody gets jealous because I know how cold it is in Australia right now. I'm currently sitting on an island in Greece, and that's where I'm working from, and it's fabulous. I love the fact that I can do that, but it's not for free. I have to get up 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning to start work. So it's a give and take. I have the flexibility that I want, but I also need to, it's not for free. I need to give back in some other way of equal value to, within my own self. I have to find that balance. Now, for some people, the idea of getting up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning is to be so horrific. It doesn't matter if I could live on an island in Greece, I'm still never going to work 5 days a week, getting up at 2 o'clock in the morning. It's going to happen. So that wouldn't be for them. But it's okay for me because I quite like the mornings. I don't know if you can hear the roosters in the background, but they're certainly making some noise. And so there's a trade-off, and that trade-off is a personal one. And again, I'm balancing my personal needs against the needs of the business, my needs to live somewhere else and explore the world versus the needs of the business, which is that I'm online to support my customers. So it is about balance, and again, it's a personal call for each employee, and it's the trick is empowering them to make that call, and they'll make it for themselves.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I mean, that's what life's all about, right? There's trade-offs with every decision that we make, whether it's about life, whether it's about, the time we want to spend with doing whatever. Um,
Yeah,
and I think the biggest step and the challenge is how do I step out of what has always been this controlled environment where it's always been, like we say, the most reported against, let alone the fact that it's in 15-minute increments. But it's the most
sometimes
reported
five.
environment of any environment. And it actually takes a whole lot of trust to kind of
Yeah,
step back and let that go. And empowerment's a
yeah,
really easy word to use.
it
But
is.
as an organizational construct and position, that posture is a really big one to step into. So, again, having the opportunity to utilize technology to support that lean in is actually when it
Yes.
starts to get really exciting. But it doesn't just happen overnight. Like I'm sure we'll hear some great, sort of anecdotes and stories about, it isn't just easy. It does require a new set of set of thinking. It requires some real support from right across the board, but it also requires some hard conversations. It'll get there in the end, but it's not an overnight thing, right? To change a posture that has been in place for, what did you say, 30 years, Tim?
At least 30 years from my
It's
personal
kind of
experience.
exciting,
Really
right? We
forever.
all say we
Yeah.
love change.
Yeah.
To add to that as well, I think the balancing act that we're speaking about, and the examples you gave, Tim, around even a 2% change can have such an impact if we go over or under. And I think for that reason, the workforce planning teams across all companies have always been the bad guys when we're trying to just balance out our customers and our employees. And I personally find it so exciting to see that shift in that space as well, where we are now becoming the wanted teams, and we're a bit more popular and we're understood, which is really exciting.
It is a massive, not the police of the call center anymore.
Right.
Which is
we still watch, we still see all, but we won't work together.
So technology is a key enabler. I think you touched on, Fran, and it is what is necessary to enable self-organizing at scale. So a small team of people can organize themselves just through social contracts. But when we get to a larger scale, like a call center, then we need technology to enable that self-organizing and that empowered experience. It's not something that can be just done through social contracts, through ways of working. It needs some sort of enabler to enable that experience that we want to create. So, which is my segue to just demonstrating the technology that we've created, that it does actually empower agents to manage their own schedules and make changes when they need to. And so, Verint TimeFlex is a tool that empowers agents to move their schedules around when they need to, when life happens. They can make changes to their published schedules up to the day before to make those adjustments, whether it's for whatever reason it is. We don't need to know. They don't need to ask permission. It's automatic. Any change they submit here automatically goes through. But of course, there's guardrails to protect the business and its needs. So if an agent wants to make changes to their schedule, the first thing they need to see is when they're working, which is represented by these slide bars. And these slide bars are also what they move around. So they can make them shorter, they can make them longer, they could move them to a different day, they could split the shifts. If your enterprise agreement supports split shifts, they can delete a shift, they can even create a new shift. So they can play around with their roster as much as they like within TimeFlex to try and find that perfect balance between their personal needs and the needs of the business. But that's the key thing. It's got to balance against their personal needs and the needs of the business. And so the way in which we empower agents to do that and put in place the necessary guardrails to protect the customer experience is we do two things. First thing we do is we show them where the business is busy and where the business is not as busy. I'm not going to say quiet, because no call center is quiet nowadays, but where it's busy and where it's not as busy. So we give every interval, usually 15-minute intervals. It could be 5 minutes, but usually 15-minute intervals. We give them a color. So red represents that the business is in red. We're busy and we really need you to work in those times. So if I slide this Monday shift to a later finish, I've gone out of green and light red into dark red, and therefore that's a helpful change. I've helped the business out, and I can see that at a glance that change is something that the business would support and would want me to do. Likewise, maybe I want to work, I want to finish early on the Friday. I want to get away, it's a long weekend, or, I want to pick up the kids and go camping, whatever it might be. Maybe I just want to go catch up with some mates. It's entirely up to you. I want to finish at 3 o'clock on Friday. So I want to move my shift to an earlier start and shorten that shift on the Friday. Now, I've moved out of red and white intervals into green. So the green means the business is already good. It doesn't need me to work then. So that's an unhelpful change. And no workforce planner is ever going to approve that, because it's not what the business needs. We need you working Friday afternoon. And even TimeFlex, if I try to submit this change now, it's going to tell me that I can't get that. Which leads me to the second thing that we do, which is that we give every 15-minute interval a flex coin value. So you can see inside each of the boxes is a color, but there's also a number, and that's the flex coin value. Our bot ingests the forecast information from the workforce planning system and then calculates what's the impact of that agent moving in or out of that interval, and then attributes a flex coin value accordingly. So as I'm moving my shifts around, I'm earning and spending flex coin. If I make a helpful change, I'm earning flex coin. If I'm making an unhelpful change, then it's costing me flex coin. And so I need to make sure that my changes adds up to a positive flex coin balance. If it's not a positive flex coin balance, then the sum of those changes is unhelpful to the business. And therefore I can't get it. But if it is a positive flex coin balance, or at least zero, then the sum of those changes have been neutral or even better. They've helped the business out, and therefore I can get that change. So if I try to submit this change now, it's telling me that I need 17 more flex coin because I have made a change where I've moved out of some red intervals into green. So I need to earn some flex coin somewhere else. So perhaps I could slide this shift across here. That's helped the business out a fair bit. I even go another 15 minutes. Now, this change plus that change has resulted in a +3 flex coin balance. Now, if I go to submit this change, I still can't get it. And that's because you might not have noticed before, but it also shrunk this shift from an 8-hour shift to a 6-hour shift, or 7.5-hour shift to a 6-hour shift. And now it's saying to me, we'd all love to work less. You need to add 1.5 hours to your schedule, because the other rule in TimeFlex is I can't increase or decrease my number of paid hours. I can move them around, but I can't increase or decrease them. And so I need to find another hour and a half. And so naturally, I'm going to look for somewhere where I can put half an hour on here and move into some white intervals. Maybe I'll do this one. That's going to cost me a couple of coins. So I'm still not quite there. Still need another half an hour. I'm okay with doing an extra half hour on this day. So let's just slide that across. And now I've got a roster which now matches the number of paid hours that I had for the week, where the total contribution of that roster to the service level for the business has actually improved because my flex coin has gone up. And I've got the Friday morning off, or the Friday afternoon off, and I've been able to finish early on the Friday. So it becomes a win-win situation. The employee has had to make that trade-off. Where am I willing to give back to the business in order to get what I want? And they can work that out for themselves because they know what's happening in their life. They know that on Thursday night, I'm taking my father to a medical appointment, so therefore I can't add the hours on there, but I will add the hours onto the Monday because that's okay. So then they can work that out for themselves, and they have that internal conversation in their head. Because of this flexibility that we're unlocking, we see enormous usage. So we're talking about, on average, over 1,000 shift changes per 100 employees per month. So it's massive. Agents are going in there all the time making shift changes. This reason why it's so popular isn't just because it gives you the empowerment, it's because also we're empowering micro changes. So maybe just finishing 15 minutes early means I can catch the earlier bus home. And I get home an hour earlier, or it could mean that I get to do the shopping before I pick up the kids from school. And that means that I don't have to drag the kids around the supermarket, buy them treats to keep them happy, get home late, get dinner on late, the kids get overtired, they're going to bed late, and the whole evening just goes pear-shaped, all because I couldn't, and that can all be reversed just by finishing 15 minutes earlier and doing the shopping first. So it's these micro changes too that we can support because there's no approval here. There's no workload for the workforce planning team. Agents can just make these little changes and get what they need.
If you think about, I know you touched on it earlier about the place people are working from as well. So suddenly, we've got an empowered team that can think about, when am I actually rostered? I can think about actually those late nights, I want to work them from home. So I'm going to balance this out with when the environment actually suits me to do it as well, because I'm happy to go into the office, but I prefer to do that on a particular time. And it might be that, it's now winter, as you say. I've been cold this week in Brisbane, not like the rest of the country. And, I want to stay in bed that little bit longer, so I'll jump in and I'm happy to work later. But I think it's fantastic what you're doing. It must
the stories are
make
interesting. We get people who have said to us, it's really, we were interviewing some users only a few weeks ago at a company, and there was a couple of young men who both separately said to us in separate sessions, this has really helped me with my mental health. So the ability just to move to let's have an extra half an hour sleep has had a huge impact on my mental well-being. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff. I haven't been sleeping very well, and just giving myself an extra half an hour sleep on a few days has really helped me get back on track. And in fact, I heard that story from two different people, separately, and they're both young. And you think, this is definitely a challenge in our community at the moment, is mental health in younger people. That was surprising. It was something I'd never thought about as a potential use case. These are the sorts of changes that can have a big impact.
It's a really good point. And, again, I think empowering people actually allows them to take control of some of those situations, as you say. I think the other really powerful thing about this, though, and it goes to, what we talk about a lot, is around generating purpose and actually creating purpose for our people. This actually gives them visibility of some of that as well, right? So, your red zone, your green zone, and the rest of it. It actually allows you to really build the narrative around what we do, why we do it, who we're serving.
Yeah.
This actually gives you real visibility of impact on customer, right? So if you've actually, as a leadership group, really generated that connection and alignment to organizational strategy, why we're doing what we're doing, this then is about the ticky-tack of that, right? It's the reality of actually remember that's, the customer you're serving. It could be your mum, could be anyone. But actually, if you're not there when we need you, we can't do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think it actually supports that whole piece around purpose, and visibility is key to empowerment. So yeah, I think it's fantastic.
Thank you. Yeah, we're really proud of it. And the thing that motivates me and the team at Verint as well is that this is really having a huge impact on people's lives. The stories that we hear from agents, from all of our customers, are sometimes kind of emotional. Like, with people saying, this has enabled me, I've just had a divorce and it's enabled me to work a second job and, cover the alimony payments. It's enabled me to be more present for my daughter, who has an issue where she suffers epileptic fits, and these stories of, another person told me that, I wish I had TimeFlex, a year ago, because I really want to be a leader, but I've got a bad reputation in the business now because I was calling in sick all the time a year ago. I was the worst sick leave person, and that's because I had a situation where my ex-husband now was an alcoholic, and I was dealing with all the issues that were associated with that, and I was struggling to commit to work. Now that I've dealt with that, I've got a divorce, and I now want to progress my career in the organization, and I'm really struggling because my reputation is scarred, and I know that. And when she was telling me the story and she was a bit teary, I was like, wow, this is the sorts of things that, we don't realize the impact of this tightly managed schedules that we deploy in contacts is having on people, and the employee expectations that we set. It has a ripple effect in people's lives. Likewise, when we unlock this flexibility, it has a positive ripple effect. And that's why we do what we do.
So it definitely requires a different mindset. I was going to say, Elif, what are you seeing now? You think about your role, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that, the environment that you're operating in for Woolies X, and what are you seeing on the ground?
Yeah, definitely. And yeah, before I get into the Woolies X spill, one of the things about working in a contact center, I think, because there's, depending on the size of it, can at times as an agent, you can feel like just another number. A lot of the times, you're sharing your team leader with up to 25 other people, and it can be hard to, be heard, especially, like I said, when you are trying to compete with, other people's concerns. So giving them the software and that tool, it's almost just like, sorry, where was I going with that? So it has helped in our environment, definitely. It's helped our team members not feel like a number. And yeah, there's so many mental health concerns going on at the moment, and each individual is different. I don't like talking about things like that. So having a tool like that is perfect for me, where it's just between myself and the system, where I can make changes for my life. And I'm pretty sure there are so many people out there who feel the same way, where something like this, when I was on the phones, I would have loved it. It would have genuinely, been just that, it would have been
Game
amazing.
changer.
Yeah.
You raise a really good point there, though, right? There's a lot of people that do not want to share. Like, there's some stuff that's really personal, and whether it's they don't want to share because they haven't yet resolved it, they don't know someone well enough, so they're, the relationship, there's kind of an imbalance there, or it might be that they actually think it might impact their, future career plan. This means they don't have to disclose things. They can actually self-manage, which again is a really healthy way that they can utilize different support. It doesn't have to breach or cross over into that, I've got to overshare with people, particularly when, we're seeing at the moment in the environment, so many team leaders have shifted from being a peer agent. Suddenly they're in a leadership role. And you think, actually, I don't want to tell them that stuff. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes it's that sharing. And so they avoid it. They don't share. They don't tell people what's going on, often until well and truly too late. And they've made different decisions about things like attendance. They've made different decisions about, even advising that they're not going to turn up. So it actually can really snowball. So I think you make a really, really good point there about that opportunity. You do not need to disclose if you don't need to. You can actually self-manage exactly as you would in any other part of your life.
Definitely. And a lot of, I think one thing that gets missed is that with people like that, where it just sort of just builds up, gets to a point where you're like, I don't think this is worth it. It's impacting me. And then they move on to another role. That's where contact centers attrition, it's always been a very big, one of the biggest problems that we've got. So is it as simple as this around, is it going to help? And at Woolies X, at our contact center, it has been helping. So I guess, quick introduction. I'm Elif. I've been sitting here smiling. You guys can probably saw that. I have been working at Woolworths since 2015. So it was also my first real job at the age of 19. Started on the phones, as most of us do when we join a contact center. And at the time, the contact center we probably had just around 300 people working. And then in around 2017, Woolies X was formed. So if you guys are wondering what Woolies X is, it is it's just a collective name that we have for our digital e-commerce, customer loyalty, and our customer service teams. And it was just formed to show that we do have this group. In around the same year, that's when our contact center was also brought in-house with Woolworths. And we call it the customer hub. So our customer hub since then has just been on a very big growth journey. I guess to give some context, in around, even in 2020, we had a headcount of around 660 people. And today we are sitting at our contact centers around 1,300 right now. So it is, a very big contact center. And one of the biggest things that a lot of people don't realize is just, the fact that we even have a contact center. A lot of my friends are always like, why does Woolworths need a contact center? What do you guys do there? And we have around nine business units that we service. So a lot of the ones you'd be familiar with would be, when you make your online orders and you have a problem where you've got a very common one, you've got bugs or a spider in your lettuce, and then who do you call? So it comes through to our contact center and we help out with those online orders. We've got an insurance team, our customer loyalty team, Everyday Rewards, which is very popular. We've got a telco team, so a lot of different business units, like I said, they're all serviced within our contact center. And the other huge thing is we service about 100,000 customers a week. So in about a week, we do have 100,000 different customers calling us. So just to give some, context on how big that is and how much and how important it is to have our frontline team members, have a good environment to work, because they're working and they're speaking to hundreds and thousands of customers all around Australia.
So if you think about your scale, right, and sometimes scale makes it even harder. Someone said to me only yesterday, "Oh gosh, I wish I've got a small contact center. I wish I had a big one," because I feel like it's a bigger impact when you're little and people don't turn up. I said, well, try being an organisation where on any given day there's 300 that don't turn up, and then you understand the impact of scale, right? Particularly when you're dealing with 100,000 customers. So for you, and if you think about the journey you've been on through this, with Tim, with Verint, why, and I guess some of it you've already answered, but flexibility, it's got to be one of the most important things for you, your environment. I know you've got a model where people work remotely as well, as some in office, but why does this flexibility and why does this tool actually support you to manage some of those challenges as in being in the workforce planning space?
Yep. So as you mentioned, after COVID, we are currently in a space where we have more than 90% of our frontline team members working from home. So now that, and all around Australia as well, we do have remote team members. And within the 2 years with the growth of our contact center where we doubled, naturally, when it comes to the workforce planning team, the need for our teams also grew. As we've been developing the business, we saw the need to also adapt and create, or just like show the importance of what we can do for our frontline and the flexibility that we're speaking about. Something as simple as within the last year, personally, my role was created just to help with that real-time management of
those sort of numbers. I can imagine how challenging some of that real-time management is, particularly given you are servicing so many different businesses as well, right? You've got all of those different skill sets and responsibilities and, even brand difference across all of those components of your business. I mean, it's more important than ever.
Yeah.
How has this made a difference for your people? How do they feel about the tool? How do they feel about using it? What's been the impact for you?
Yeah. So, the different businesses, they all operate so differently. And we do have a workforce planning team. We do the best we can in regards to putting the right people, right place, right time, and then also supporting them on a daily basis. But because it is such a large contact center, we can't be there for everyone. So there isn't enough of us for the amount of people we have. And we have had TimeFlex help us. It's just been for my team, having that real-time team and myself, we just couldn't be everywhere at all times. And, I say the seventh person in my team is TimeFlex at the moment. I count it as a whole person.
It's probably more than one. It's probably more than one.
Exactly.
And what are able to get your people, if you think about the amount of time you must have invested in changing schedules. I know in my previous life, that was one of the biggest bugbears, not just of the workforce management function, team leaders that were consumed with changing schedules and having the conversations that said, no, you can't do that, and things like that. Because again, it was a given that they shouldn't have even been asking for some of them. Now that there's the visibility, you must find the frustration from that leadership level as well has changed.
Yes, it definitely has. I'd say across a daily basis in the past, we would have at least 5 different team leaders just say, hey, my agent wants to start half an hour later, or my agent wants to have tomorrow off. Is that possible? And the answer's always been no. It's too short notice. It's not something we can do. Should have given us more notice, or I'm sorry, go swap the shift with someone else. And it was always just because that's just how we, the plan is in place. We can't shift from that. We have to follow it. Otherwise, how do we explain to the business why we haven't met our service?
And if you do it for one, you have to do it for 100.
Exactly.
It's all that stuff, right? It's the old rhetoric. Yeah.
I
think it's great. There's a question here from Trista specifically about what the change like for you guys in Woolies X, and was it difficult process to embed it? You know, how did you sell it to your staff? How did you get them into it? Did you start with a trial, then go bigger, or did you just say, here's this thing, we're going to use it?
Yeah, for sure. We're, you know, at Woolworths, I think one of the best things about working at Woolies and just Woolworths is we do genuinely care about our staff. And I'm not just saying that because I work for Woolworths. It has always been something I've seen across my whole time here. And, you know, we do have a very mature sorry. We have a very mature custom employee engagement process. So, you know, just like we ask our customers for feedback, that's exactly what we do with our frontline team as well. When it came to deciding if we wanted to have time flex, it was genuinely I came across it at the time, and I knew instantly, I was like, this is going to be great in our contact center. And I just, you know, I worked with our business, and within a few months, we just agreed that we were gonna go ahead and have time flex at Woolies. And yeah, we rolled it out where we went to our staff and we said, you know, we've heard you from some of those, you know, frontline, the feedback that we've been getting. It was as simple as saying, we heard you, we heard your needs, and we are giving you this additional product on top of what we already offer. So it was, yeah, within a few months, it was decided, and we started the rollout process where we were like, we're introducing Time Flex, and look how great this product is. And from that day, it has genuinely been, yeah, the whole rollout experience, and every new team that we put onto it has just been loving it. And you know, we still have a lot of small teams who are almost fighting over wanting to be next in that process.
Next.
So
yeah,
they're just like, when is my team going to get on?
That's a very good way to be. Tim, there's a couple of great questions here specifically about time flex. So I'm going to throw some of these at you. And any questions we don't get to, we'll actually include a response to in the mail out when we send out the recording. So keep them coming. So important question. Do you have to have Verint, the Verint platform?
No, we support several WFMs. So it's not just for Verint. So it's, yeah, it does plug into other WFMs. Of course, we would love you to take the Verint WFM as well. We'll sell that to you just as happily as TimeFlex, but TimeFlex will plug into other WFMs too.
Fantastic, yeah. Super versatile. Next one, can FlexCoin values be weighted on specific queues or work types, i.e. back office, inbound chat? Everyone's nodding. You guys are both nodding. And are you able to swap between specific work types? For example, if you're scheduled for digital work like email or whatever, is it possible to swap to inbound work type as the requirement's greater? Would you get more coins for some things than others, so you balance that?
When it's calculating the FlexCoin values, it's looking at the workload for that particular interval, and so you can. So that's what it's based off. And if you're moving a shift around, then we can determine how you want to treat, based on the customer, how you want to treat those non-customer facing, also what do you call it, asynchronistic work types like email, chat, and others. So we can either remove them or move them, or based on what you decide is the way you want to treat them. So it's actually customized, along with other activities as well. So usually what businesses do, I'll try not to give a long answer here because there's rabbit holes in workforce planning, as we know. And so and managing multi-skill environments is a rabbit hole, but basically we set rules based on your business requirements, and that's how it's then treated. I'll just pause it there because there's more to it, of course.
No, but me as an individual, I can't swap into work that's only available that I can't do. No. Perfect.
No.
Imagine that.
What we call it is, and you know, we do this at Woolies, we have what we call personalized pricing. So what you see as your FlexCoin value might be different to the person sitting next to you, depending on what skills you've got. So depending on skills will depend on what work you can do, and therefore that will depend on the forecast and the workload that you can do, that you're supporting, and therefore there's a different price. for each individual.
That's a really good description of it. Thank you. Fantastic question here. Have you had situations, and it probably for both of you, where staff have opted for shift preferences that leave a gap? Now, we saw how you did it, that it needed to be about the coins, like balanced. But they've said, example on grand final day, Christmas Eve, day before a long weekend, how do you kind of balance some of those things? Because I promise you, everyone wants them off, right?
It's a good question, isn't it? So the Flex coin has an expiry. So you can accumulate coins for a future day. I can help the business out today to spend them tomorrow, which is fantastic. We want to give as much flexibility to agents as possible, but it's as possible, because if people are accumulating lots of coins by helping the business out, then that also presents that risk. The day before grand final day, the day before Melbourne Cup Day in Australia, long weekend, people might want to shorten their Friday so they can get away early on the long weekend. And if everybody had a big coin balances, then that could result in a mass movement of staff out of that time. So what we do is we have an expiry date on the coins, first in, first out. It's usually starts at 30 days. So you can earn coins, but if you don't spend them, they will expire in 30 days. And we always start with 30 days, or it could be less. It could be 12 days. It's whatever number you choose. But we usually recommend starting with 30 days. And then after a few months and getting more confident with the product, we usually see businesses then increase that up to 60 days. And sometimes even one of our customers has that set to 90 days. So it's just, getting more confident with the Flex coin, how it's working, understanding that risk, monitoring the size of coin balances that have been accumulated, and then we can play with that expiry period.
And to add to that, I think it's still important to recognize that there are some days in the business where, it's Christmas Day for online orders. We just, no matter what, leading up to Christmas, it's the busiest period in the year. And we know, and our frontline team members know, that we just need all hands on deck. So we're also able to put out blockout periods where we're like, look, on this day, we're just not going to allow anyone to make changes. We hope you understand. It's always, across the last 12 months, we've not had any issues with our frontline, understanding that just is how it is when we put blockouts on our public holidays.
Oh, that's perfect. So you can actually block out periods. That's, And it comes back to that leadership conversation, doesn't it? Around actually know our business, know our customers, know what we need to do. There's, I think you call them the guardrails before, Tim, that people can operate within. A couple of general questions here. What have you seen in relation to the impact on things like your absenteeism, engagement? Are you seeing really strong results and strong changes in those standard metrics?
Yeah, I like to definitely hope so. I look at our numbers, and I want to say it's because of TimeFlex, but just some of the feedback we've been receiving here from our teams have been great. So some of the things we're noticing, single day annual leave requests, for example, that's definitely come down, where we find that that's something I've noticed. The general view or general comments we're getting are things like, I love being able to move my shift. So for example, on Fridays, that's a really big one where a lot of our uni students who, obviously have flexible working arrangements, and they have to work every day that they're not at university. So a lot of the time their social lives are impacted. And we've got many of our agents who said that it's improved their social lives. Their friends aren't, telling them that they're party poopers anymore. They're not, that they're like, we're not being hated on anymore, where I can now move my times around, where, I finish earlier on a Friday when I've always had to work. So I can go hang out with them, or I don't have to say no to events knowing that I can't swap my shift or I can't apply for annual leave. It's like having that additional option has just improved their general view on just working at Woolies, but also knowing that their financial situation where I have to study, I have to work full time, but I can also have a social life. So that's been a very positive change we're seeing with our uni students, but also as well our our contact center. We've got people ages from 17 to 60 plus. It's very very broad age range and different needs. We've got a lot of our mums who are loving it as well, where because they also work from home, they're trying to with their young kids. Where I think for children it's also hard. Your mum's at home all day. It's like why aren't you giving me attention? So it's the little things like that where they're able to move their shifts around the school, taking before school and after school to just be present rather than having to work even though when they're at home. So I think
definitely makes a difference.
Different comments, little things like that. Our staff are loving it, and those little things.
Yep, definitely makes a big difference. And I am mindful we've got a whole lot more questions here, Tim. So I'm going to actually get you to use some responses for those, and we'll connect any of those in as well, Elif, with what you've got on in the environment. So we'll include both the questions and a response in what we send out to all of the attendees, because I am mindful of time. I think we could have talked about this one for another, good half an hour. And it's so good to see that finally we are having the opportunity to make a conscious change within the environment and really focus on not just the employee experience. Because again, the guardrails make sure our customer experience is still front of mind. And creating the visibility is actually building a greater connection with your workforce, the people that they're actually servicing and what they're actually needing in the environment. So I've got to say, well done, Tim. I know it's been a long road for you, and it's exciting to see this really, playing out. And it's great to see the impact it's having in your environment at Woolies as well, Elif. So, thank you so much for sharing all of that today. Like I said, we've got lots of comments here that for everyone on the line, we'll send all of that out to everybody. So thank you, guys. Thank you for an awesome session. Loved hearing it, but also it's great to actually see it in action, right? So I think sometimes you can hear about it, but seeing it makes it kind of like, now I get it. So thank you both. To everybody that came along, thanks so much. We'll send out the recording, link to the recording, probably very early next week, and responses to those questions. Enjoy the rest of your day, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.